Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating intersection, the place where fundamental human psychology crashes right into cutting-edge computer science. We're going to unpack exactly why humans willingly, and honestly sometimes eagerly, buy into zero-value scams. And then, we'll look at how researchers are actually deploying explainable artificial intelligence to hunt these exact frauds down on the Ethereum blockchain. It's basically a story of human greed meeting machine logic, and trust me, the mechanics of it are absolutely gripping.
So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The greater fool theory. 2. Ponzis on the blockchain. 3. Training the AI detective. 4. The anatomy of a scam. And 5. Inside the AI's mind. Let's get right to it.
Starting with Section 1, the greater fool theory, the psychology of buying nothing.
Let me ask you something. Would you buy a totally worthless asset? Like, literally worthless? Well, recent economic research by Hulzeknecht and his colleagues tested this exact premise in a lab setting. They set up a game featuring a zero-value token, an asset with zero fundamental value. But here was the catch. Its price magically doubled in each period of the experiment. The researchers basically wanted to know, would people still buy it, knowing full well it was fundamentally worthless? And the results? Yeah, people absolutely did.
This brilliantly illustrates what economists call the greater fool theory. It's the act of buying an asset with zero fundamental value strictly because you believe someone else, a greater fool, will buy it from you later on at a higher price. The researchers found that participating in these zero-value markets was driven heavily by what people believed others would do. And here's the crazy part. When there was ambiguity, meaning the extremely low probability of the asset having real value was kept totally unknown, the prices skyrocketed way higher than when the exact risks were clearly stated. It turns out people will literally pay real money for nothing, just as long as the narrative of a future buyer exists.
Moving on to Section 2, Ponzis on the blockchain, the perfect crime scene. Okay, think about a traditional Ponzi scheme. It's centralized. It's organized by someone whose identity is usually known. And crucially, when the authorities find it, it can be shut down. But a smart Ponzi contract on the Ethereum blockchain, that is a completely different beast. The initiator is totally anonymous. Once that contract is deployed, the code is public but entirely unmodifiable. And worst of all, the execution is unstoppable. There's no central authority that can just hit a kill switch, seize the funds, and refund the victims. It's basically the perfect automated trap for the greater fool.
So the trick is defining exactly what makes a smart contract a Ponzi so we can actually stop it. Researchers use Bartoletsy's 4 rules of a smart Ponzi for this. First, the contract redistributes money to investors based on a set logic. Second, it receives money only from investors, meaning there's absolutely no external revenue source. Third, for early investors to make a profit, subsequent investors have to join and put money in. And fourth, the later you join, the higher your risk of losing everything, because the whole system relies entirely on a constant flow of new victims. If a contract meets all 4 of these, boom, it's a Ponzi. These are the exact rules our AI Cyber-Sleuth is going to be hunting for.
Which brings us to Section 3, training the AI detective, turning code into clues. Now, to train an AI, you obviously need data, but not just any data. You need meticulously categorized data. So researchers built this massive data set of 4,422 unique real-world Ethereum smart contracts. Out of those, they manually analyzed and labeled 673 as confirmed smart Ponzis, using those 4 rules we just talked about. This labeled dataset became the training ground for a light gradient boosting machine classifier, or LGBMC. Kind of wordy, I know, but basically it's a powerful algorithm designed specifically to learn the hidden patterns of fraud.
Section 4, the anatomy of a scam, spotting the digital fingerprint.
This part is so cool, it brilliantly illustrates how the AI does its detective work. If you look at the probability distribution for input transactions, you'll see this massive gap between the blue line, which represents Ponzi contracts, and the orange line representing legitimate ones. Ponzis typically have a very small, highly concentrated number of inputs. But on the flip side, if you look at payments out, the blue and orange lines are nearly identical. Legitimate contracts and Ponzis actually pay money out in very similar patterns. So the AI learns a vital clue. Don't look at how they pay money out, look closely at exactly how the money comes in. Out of 25 possible variables analyzed, the detective's absolute best clues finally emerged. The ultimate smoking gun right at the top, SDEV_TX_in, which is the standard deviation of the number of transactions per day. The second best clue is the percentage of active days with at least one input transaction.
What this basically tells us is that the variability and the frequency of daily inputs are the absolute strongest digital fingerprints of a Ponzi scheme. The algorithm realized that Ponzis have these highly irregular, bursty periods of money coming in compared to normal, healthy contracts.
Section 5. Inside the AI's mind. Demystifying the black box.
Okay, this SHPB swarm plot essentially acts as an X-ray of the AI's brain. I know it looks a bit complicated, but it tells a beautiful, surprisingly simple story. Each dot here is a smart contract. The color shows the value of the feature. Red is high, blue is low. Now, if a dot is pushed over to the right side of the center line, the AI is flagging it as a likely Ponzi. Just look at the third row down, lifetime. Notice how all the blue dots, which represent a very short contract lifetime, are pushed far to the right? This means when the AI sees a contract that hasn't been alive for very long, it immediately gets suspicious. Now look at the top row, TX_in, or input transactions. Again, the blue dots, meaning a low number of inputs, are pushed to the right. The AI's logic is laid completely bare for us here. Short lifetimes combined with a low, highly concentrated number of inputs trigger massive fraud alerts.
So the crucial point we take away from the AI's analysis is this verdict right here. Smart Ponzis are fast, concentrated, and doomed to collapse quickly. The machine learning model literally mathematically proved that these schemes have remarkably short lifespans. They rely on a tiny, concentrated burst of inputs to pay a select few early adopters. And because it quickly becomes impossible to recruit enough of those greater fools to sustain the pyramid, they collapse rapidly.
Which leaves us with a pretty profound question to end this explainer. We now have incredible, explainable AI capable of sniffing out the digital fingerprints of fraud on the blockchain with absolutely stunning accuracy. But, as we learned from the behavioral economists right at the very beginning, the urge to speculate on zero-value assets is deeply, deeply wired into human psychology. So, will algorithms and AI eventually outsmart human greed by shutting these digital traps down, or will the greater fools always just find a new game to play? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today, and keep questioning the data.